And the other thing about, you mentioned sanctions. Sanctions very rarely work. What sanctions do is, especially in a dictatorship, which it's almost America almost always uses them only against dictatorships. It just consolidates power in the hands of the dictator. Mm-hmm. It gives them even more control over the society. If you sanction food, if you sanction weaponry, if you sanction medicine, that just then gives the dictator life and death control over the population. Secret police never go hungry. Armies never go hungry. It's the poor people. So, right. Sanctions are just. I've always felt it's just a cheap and easy way of making it look like you're doing something, but in fact just empower who you're against. Castro was kept in power in Cuba for 50 years by sanctions. If he wouldn't have lasted a decade, if not for American sanctions, American sanctions gave Castro absolute control over that island.
Interesting.
And it was the best thing that ever happened to him. I'm sure every day he was like, got down. Well, he probably didn't pray, but he was just so thankful that American sanctions.
Do you think we knew about this or have learned anything from this?
No, because I don't think we've learned anything, because it's a way to look like you're doing something without committing troops on the ground, without going to war. And both Democrat and Republican presidents have done it all the time. Clinton did it with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. People were dying in Iraq, in Saddam Hussein's Iraq, because they didn't have insulin, the diabetics and stuff, because of the American embargo. So you just gave Saddam Hussein, again, life and death control over his people. It hardly ever works.
Yeah, the idea of soft power, right? And it's being used in many ways with tariffs and then these sanctions, and I think they just recently announced they're going to double sanction Russia somehow.
Right.
They already have Russia sanctioned. Now they're going to sanction the people that trade with them, I think.
Right.
Like somehow that's going to work. I don't know. Or is that going to strengthen the BRICS alliance?
No. What it's going to do is going to make the 20 to 50 oligarchs around Putin just that much richer. I mean, that's what I think is going to happen. So,
where do you see this Russia conflict going with Ukraine? Do you think it's going to freeze? Do you think they're going to win? It seems like they're winning pretty hard right now.
It does. It seems like the Russians are winning. I remember when Trump was elected the first time, this group of psychologists did a profile of Trump, and one thing they all seemed to sort of agree on was that he has such a personalized approach to power that if under his watch, say September 11th happened, that he would see it as a personal attack on him. He wouldn't see it as so much as an attack on the country, but because everything is about him.
Yes.
So similarly, extrapolating that to what's happening now in Russia. Now, Putin's kind of shamed him. He had this idea that he understood Putin, and Putin would that they were kind of buddies or whatever. And I think Putin has kind of played him for a fool over and over again about Ukraine. And now he's finally gotten his back up. He's going to ramp up, arms shipments to Ukraine. He's going to put these sanctions in place. My suspicion will be that Putin is gonna play for time. The one wild card in the whole Russia-Ukraine thing is because Putin is a dictator, and because he controls information into his own country, he always has the prerogative of declaring victory and going home, right? He can say, okay, mission accomplished, we're out of here. If the Americans are smart, that they will set up a situation where he's able to do that. I don't see it happening with more sanctions, though.
We had an off-ramp a month into the war.
Right.
Literally in March.
Right.
I think it was Naftali Bennett was hosting some sort of a negotiation with Trump and Zelensky.
Right.
And Putin was trying to negotiate an end to this war.
Right.
And I think it was the Biden administration who basically said, no, we're not gonna let this happen.
Right. It's Yeah.
So what is his goal? What are his goals? Like why would Putin be wanting to negotiate an end to the war 1 month into it?
Right. Well, they weren't accomplishing what they had set out to do.
Because I think Ukraine had just won like a strategic battle or something right when that happened, and like we had them on their heels.
Right.
And one of the top generals in the U.S. military was like publicly stating like, this is what needs to happen. Now is the time.
Right. That's right. No, it's right. It was probably about 2 months in when they failed to take Kyiv and they were getting pushed back. And what Putin had been trying to do up until then, it's a classic Russian tactic, is you use your conscripts. You use the grunts. They were not Russia's best soldiers.
They weren't using prisoners yet, though, were they?
They were not using prisoners at that point. But the frontline troops were from Asian Russia, and they were conscripts. So in the Russian military mindset, both groups of people who were very expendable. But the problem is they were not very well trained, and they were getting their asses kicked. And so that all kind of changed. What is not going to happen is you cannot get a Ukrainian president, Zelensky or anybody else, to agree to the loss of Crimea and the loss of the eastern provinces. That's what's going to be the de facto situation on the ground. They're not going to get them back. But you can never ask them to formally cede it to Russia. So, I mean, and I remember when Zelensky was meeting with Trump in the office, they were saying that this is the deal. You have to kind of realize you're never going to get those back.
Give it up.
He just can't, But the reality on the ground is they've lost.
Well, what are they going to do if they don't have our help?
Well, that's true. Then the whole But I don't think he could ever manage to formally cede that. It could be in dispute. Kind of like the way Germany during the Cold War was divided. No, we never recognized the annexation of East Germany, but it was a fact, and so we kind of lived with it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's like me telling John Jones that I'm not going to let him punch me in the face.
Right.
It's like he's going to punch me in the face if he wants to. Or he's
That's right.
Like I'm not going to let John Jones take my lunch from me. Like,
that's right.
I have no choice really.
Right.
Unless I have like 10 Mike Tysons behind me, like helping me.
Right. That's right. But
if Mike Tysons tell me like, hey, give him half your sandwich.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll be done. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Right. But he could take half your sandwich, and you just say, I'm not giving you permission to take half the sandwich.
Right. Just no, I'm not happy about this.
That's right.
And also, like in the beginning of the war, I think Putin only had a couple 100,000 troops, maybe less than 200,000 troops, right?
That's right. Yeah.
To invade Ukraine, which is. He would at least, you would think he would need in the millions, right? If he actually wanted to do something serious,
right?
And since then he did the July 12th, 2021 essay, right, where he talks about how he was ashamed by the breakup of the Soviet Union, and basically he thought that like the Donbass region and Crimea, needed to be a part of Greater Russia,
right?
Ukraine needed to let Russia be like an official language. It was a long essay. The sentiment of the essay was not that we want to make Ukraine part of the Soviet Union, essentially.
Right. Although he said again and again that he is
no
never
NATO. Right.
That's no NATO, and that Ukraine is not really a real country.
Right.
I mean, he said that over and over again.
Yeah.
But the tool he's used over and over again, and he's done it in the Baltic countries, is this idea that the ethnic Russians are being discriminated against, and we're going in order to protect the ethnic Russians, and that was the idea with Luhansk and Donetsk and Crimea. Having seen the Russian army in Chechnya. I think it's probably gotten somewhat better on the ground now. I mean, more professional. Mm-hmm. But the first months of Ukraine reminded me very much of Chechnya, and that it's a really disorganized army. Generals could care less about the welfare, the livelihood of their soldiers. I remember, and I remember when I was in Chechnya, in Grozny, the Russians did this. Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, the Russians did this crazy thing of just doing a headlong march into Grozny, and being slaughtered. And something like 600 Russian troops were killed in about 45 minutes. And the next day, the Chechens offered them a ceasefire, temporary ceasefire, so they could come and collect the bodies that were all over the streets of Grozny. And the Russians just said no. And it was really interesting to me that this came up again and again with the Chechen rebels that I talked with, is that we are fighting an enemy that doesn't even care about getting back the bodies of their own dead soldiers. And so these bodies were left in the streets to be eaten by dogs, and that's what happened, and that's been happening in Ukraine also. And I've heard this again and again. It's like, how, what kind of army? The American army will suffer casualties. It will lose people to recover the bodies of dead soldiers, and they've done that all through history. But to not even care about collecting the bodies of your own dead is just something that's quite bizarre. But they're brutal. I mean, I've never seen an army quite like it. I would compare the Russian army, and again, I'm talking about the army I've seen, which were not the elite units, but I would compare the Russian army that I've seen in action to sort of a militia, a guerrilla group you'd find in sub-Saharan Africa.